That's what I'm saying.
Okay, with it being 6:30, I would like to call this meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Board, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the July 16th, 2020, July 30th, 2020, and August 6th, 2020 open session meetings as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the Francis Howell Board of Education would like to recognize the citizens for Francis Howell. I will turn this over to Ms. Jennifer Joles.
Thank you, Ms. Lang. Tonight, we would like to recognize the Citizens for Francis Howell Committee for their tireless work in ensuring safer schools and stronger students through a successful Prop S campaign. On June 2nd, our district voters approved Proposition S, a $244 million bond issue, the largest in the state of Missouri, by the way, with more than 79% voting yes. As a result, nearly 18,000 students and 2,500 staff across the district will see critical improvements to their school buildings in the coming months. In total, Prop S will fund more than 100 construction and renovation projects, including a new Francis Howell North High School, major updates at the older schools in the district, and safety improvements in all buildings. We want to thank the volunteer members of our campaign committee for their dedication and enthusiasm during the entire process. Their efforts will ensure quality and equitable facilities across the district, while also creating jobs and putting millions of dollars into the local economy. This committee helped voters understand the current state of our facilities and the positive long-term impact Prop S funding would have on our students, our staff, and our schools. Today, the future of our facilities looks bright for our students and our district, and none of this would have been possible without the commitment and expertise of the Citizens for Francis Howell Committee. When I call your name, please come to the podium to be recognized. Terry Hain. Elena Gibson. Steve Johnson. Kimberly Killian. Amy McAvoy. Mike Summer. I also want to recognize 3 committee members who could not be here with us tonight, actually 4. Jane Cox, Marie McDowell, Jeff Stallhut, and former Superintendent Renee Schuster. Thank you.
Okay, we will be moving on to Patron Comments right now. During Patron Comments, patrons and staff are invited to address the Board of Education. Please come to the podium so everyone can hear and adhere to the 3-minute time limit. The board is interested in hearing the public's concerns and opinions. We do not respond to comments or questions during the meeting. Questions and concerns will be addressed by Dr. Hovind and other appropriate staff members. Please remember, comments about individual students or staff are not allowed due to confidentiality. These concerns need to be brought to administration's attention and may be brought to the board in closed session. We have also received Patron Comments via the online submission form. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, I'd like to call our first person, Adriana Kuhn.
Do I go up there, or do I
Yep.
stand right here? Okay.
Or you can stay there, whatever you want to do.
I'll go up there because it's hard to hear.
Okay.
Can I take this off, or do I have to leave it on? Because it's hard to like breathe and talk, or is it? Since I'm 6 feet away, or no?
We are spaced out.
Okay. I've just been reading it and it's hard with the mask. Okay, first I'd like to say thank you to Francis Howell School District for offering in-class and virtual options for this school year. I and many other parents stand behind the board decision 100% for offering 5-day in-class learning. Education is essential. Claiming that we can't go back until it's safe for everyone isn't realistic or measurable. There are inherent risks to everything we do, and I am proud Francis Howell School District is leading from the top and taking steps to ensure the best education possible for our children. Today I want to discuss the plan going forward for the school year. I think clarity, transparency, and open communication are essential to providing a better understanding for what the in-class learning year will look like. We are all living in very uncertain times, and Francis Howell School District can create stability so staff and families aren't wondering if a decision will be made to move to hybrid or virtual learning. I don't think in-class students, staff, and families should be sitting around every day filled with stress, worrying about when our lives will be uprooted. Many districts have already rolled back their original learning plans for the upcoming year. I do not want this to happen for Francis Howell School District. I would like the board to outline the top 5 factors that will go into the decision if Francis Howell School District goes hybrid or virtual. What are the thresholds for these factors, and how will COVID positive cases be handled? I think it's important to lay out a plan for all to see. I don't want this decision quickly decided based on heightened emotions or sensationalized media. Having a plan and outline for the in-class learning semester will help the board make calm, clear decisions going forward for the 2020-2021 school year. This will provide parents, teachers, and staff an understanding how upcoming decisions will be made. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening. I know you are all working very hard for our district, and this doesn't go unnoticed.
Next we have Ryan Myron.
Should go like that.
Good.
Do we have something to wipe that off?
Laura, do you have a wipe or something to wipe the microphone off?
I'm not gonna touch it, I'm okay.
I just wanted to make sure everyone was comfortable.
I'm okay, thank you very much. Hey, may I begin? Good. A very special thank you to the teachers, the staff, administration, Francis Howell for all the hard work and dedication during these unusually stressful times. I wanted to talk about respect, especially for our teachers. About 3 years ago, around the holiday season, I was diagnosed with total blood sepsis, which is pretty much close to death. And they told my wife that night when I went into the ICU that I may not make it. The unique thing that happened that day or that night is we had a terrible ice storm, and the buses couldn't run, the kids couldn't get home, and the teachers, the principal at Daniel Boone Elementary, because that's where my kids were at the time, stayed the night and made pizza and watched movies with our kiddos in the gym at their own free will. What an amazing team. Again, I want to speak about having respect for our teaching professionals in school, administration and staff. There's a push to shove these kids back into school full time and not require them to wear a mask or making a mask optional. Putting them at risk and the teachers at risk. Please support our teachers. I've heard comments about it being their job. Well, folks, they've chosen this profession from their hearts. It's not for the pay, it's not for the benefits, it's not for an amazing retirement package, but it's for the love of what they do. I've witnessed on social media that parents want their tax money back, that teachers don't want to teach in an unsafe environment, that, quote, if they are afraid of getting sick, they should get another job, unquote. That is unrealistic and not fair of these people to set expectations like that in the middle of a pandemic. Being a good taxpayer is your duty as a citizen to better the community. We do not own these people. We don't own the teachers. They don't work for us. They work for our children. If they had to be here, if they had to be there in person to teach, then wear a mask. Do your best to protect them and your children. It's only fair as they have families too. For the minority of you that refuse to follow the rules, make up your own and not listen to the suggested intelligence of the CDC and other top health organizations that listen to conspiracy theories and just plain know more than everyone else. Put yourself in their shoes. If you were a teacher and some little snot-nosed kindergartner sneezed on you and your child ended up in the ICU, your thoughts might change a little bit. It might be different. So as of today, there are 44 parents that have signed a petition started by Francis Howell, a parent that were against wearing a mask. They'll be sending their kids to school. I have concerns about the safety of my kids and other kids. Please consider the respect of your teachers and the safety and health of our and your children.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Erin Cox.
Hi, thank you for having me here this evening. I just want to start by saying I appreciate the last speech, and just because I speak for myself, we want our kids back in school does not mean we don't respect teachers anymore or any less. I love teachers. My mom is a teacher. I respect teachers. I care for teachers, but I also respect and care for my kids. Sir? The most powerful word in our vocabulary is the word choice. And no matter what happens in our life, you always have a choice of how you're going to handle it. You may not like the choice, but you still have it. Tonight, I've come here to ask you to let us keep our choice. I know COVID is scary. I know people die from it. But I work in the funeral industry. And I know depression is scary. And I know isolation is scary. And I know being stuck at home with abusive parents is scary, and not having food is scary. And I know suicide is scary, and I know overdoses are scary, and I know that you can die from those too. And I know that you can because I buried 3 teenagers just last week. All of whom died from either a drug overdose or a suicide. I ask that the board stand behind its decision for the choice to allow parents who feel comfortable to send their kids to school in a safe way. No one here is forcing you to go back to school. If you don't want to, you don't have to. You may not like some of the ramifications of that choice, but that is still your choice. And I remind you that mental health is still a health concern, and currently it is more of a threat to our children than COVID. I'd ask the board to please keep mental health into consideration as much as they do the physical health, and remind you that this is not a form of disrespect, it's a form of love for the children. Thank you.
Next we have Shelley Parks.
I watched that video today.
Spies.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Shelley Parks, and I'm an English teacher at Francis Howell North. I believe we all have the same goal, to get our kids back into our school buildings in person to provide them with one of the best educations our state has to offer. We are a premier school district with the best leaders, teachers, parents, and students I've ever met. Passing the recent proposition and holding the Black Voices protest brought this community together to say our kids' education is a priority and every student deserves equitable educational experiences. Francis Howell, we've done great work and we need to keep our community unified. Right now, we are acting as if people within our community are the enemy, and that's simply not the case. Our enemy isn't teachers. We love your kids, and we aren't lazy or looking for a vacation. You know that. You pay good money to live in this district because you're proud of the education we provide. Our enemy isn't school leaders who are navigating critical decisions for student and staff safety. Our enemy isn't parents who need their jobs to support the children they and we love, and who love public schools enough to fight for them to be open. Our enemy is a virus that has one job, to infect people. To defeat this enemy, we must stop arguing. It distracts from our goal, getting our kids back into our buildings the second it's safe. To make it safer, we must unify our message. Number one, the FHSD community should write a combined statement from all stakeholders to the county health department saying, our kids' education is more important than carnivals, fairs, concerts, bars, and other large gatherings that become events where this virus spreads. For now, these must be put on hold to make sure our students can be in our buildings as much as possible. According to physicians, masking will help keep our school buildings open too, and the health department needs to require this in our community. Maybe other county school districts would sign on an agreement. Number two, the FHSD community should also respond to the letter politicians sent our district leaders. We can tell them instead of demanding schools open in person and walking away from responsibility, we love their partnership. Underfunded schools are not safe schools. We need funding for PPE. Teachers are sharing Amazon lists and GoFundMes to help purchase materials to do our jobs safely. That wouldn't be acceptable in other professions, and it's not acceptable for the teaching profession. We need more staff so students can be distanced and taught safely. We need more transportation funding, not less, so our students can ride the buses safely. Politicizing our children's lives is wrong. Our students deserve our advocacy on these fronts. Our community has clearly stated that our students feeling valued and being educated are our top priorities. Our collective action must continue this message. If we don't keep our kids safe, value our teachers, and advocate for change in our communities, education could feel the impact for years to come. We won't add teachers to the profession, and we won't keep the ones we have. If we don't advocate for these changes, many aren't going to feel safe in our buildings, myself included. We are indeed better together. Let's make it safe together.
Next we have Amy Rosness.
Hello, I'm Amy Rosness. I teach French at Francis Howell Central, and this year will be my 8th year with the district. Today I'm not here to talk about health, although I do have many opinions about that. I've read studies, and as a doctoral student, I have spent a year analyzing studies, making sure they're valid, and so I do believe there's reason for concern. But besides that, I'm here to talk about the logistics of going back to school in person. I love teaching, and I love being in the classroom. I always look forward to going back to school, but right now I don't feel like that because I have no idea what the structure of my class is going to look like. I pride myself on group work, interactive activities, and community building. But I don't know how to do that with masks and social distancing and limited sharing of supplies. As a language teacher, I pride myself on speaking in French and working with students to help them understand. But now I'm asking myself, will I even be able to speak French this year in my classes? How will the students understand me? Will I be able to understand them? Will students in my class that are hesitant to speak up on a good day have the courage to speak up even more through their masks? Or will their voices just get lost? If I had 3 hours instead of 3 minutes, maybe I could have time to share all of my concerns. But for now, I'll say this. I'm teaching one virtual class this semester, and I count myself lucky, not only because I will be able to actually socially distance for 1 hour a day, but because it's the only hour that feels normal for me this year. The students can see my face, and I can hear their voices and see their smiles. I can break students into groups so they can work together and solve problems and create presentations. I can play games with my students. We can learn and just have fun together. There are a lot of issues with virtual learning and there's a lot of kinks to work out, I know that. But I already know that the best teacher I can be this year to in-person students pales in comparison to how I can do my job virtually. I sincerely hope that I'm not being misunderstood. Teachers are committed and will always do the best for every child's education. I know that I try to do that every day. But, and this is a fact, the classrooms our kids are walking into this year have very little resemblance to a normal classroom. The amount of rules and safety precautions that have been issued and the more that are yet to come will make that impossible. What in-person students can expect this school year is limited contact with others, limited talking to friends, and much less of the fun parts of school, like games and group activities. Not to mention, they're not going to be able to see their teacher's face. Finally, I would like to address the board members specifically. I know that a lot of people have done a lot of work to make digital and in-person education happen, and I value those people even though I do not envy them at all. But I want you to stop and think about the children of this district. You make the decisions for Francis Howell. You have the power to positively influence the education of each child in this district. You don't have to wait for county council recommendations. So, for the safety of our students and for their education, their comfort, and their social and emotional health, I urge you to say these easy words. I motion that the Francis Howell School District starts the year virtually until it is safe enough to create some sense of normalcy in our classrooms. Would anyone like to second that? Thank you.
Next we have Luke Eckhoff.
Good evening. A comforting premise during this life-upending pandemic has been that children are relatively spared by COVID-19. However, there's a growing body of evidence that refutes the notion that children are immune or resistant. Infected children have at least as much viral RNA and nasopharyngeal passages as adults, and studies have documented viral shedding in symptomatic and asymptomatic children. A widely cited South Korean study suggests that children aged 10 to 19 transmit the virus at rates similar to adults, and anecdotal evidence from Israel, the American South, and within Francis Howell reveals that the virus can spread efficiently in youth-centric environments, even with well-intentioned mitigation strategies in place. To be sure, the science is far from perfect, but the general principle is clear. Children become infected and readily transmit the virus, to say nothing of risk to adult staff. What then are the district's data-driven criteria for transitioning between in-person and virtual learning? The World Health Organization recommends a positive test rate at or below 5% for 14 days. The Harvard Global Health Institute below 3% with fewer than 10 new cases per 100,000, provided individuals have access to tests regardless of symptoms and with 24-hour turnaround time. And the CDC's gating criteria call for 14-day decreases with flat or increasing testing volume. With an average 22 new cases per 100,000 per day and a positive test rate of 14.8% in Francis Howell, we currently satisfy none of these criteria. In a school of 500, approximately 4 people would arrive infected within the first week. While the risks will never be reduced to zero, forcing families to make decisions about issues you have not yet fully wrestled with is a dereliction of duty. I fear that your plan seeks to foster a return to normal rather than safeguard the health of the community. Shielding yourself from responsibility through sports waivers and dubious invocations of HIPAA is not the path to teaching resilience and morality. Reopening schools to ease the burdens of food scarcity, childcare, or technology access is a policy failure, not a medical necessity. Hastily reopening will only deepen enduring racial and socioeconomic inequities. We no doubt all share the goal of students physically present at school, but you must do the work to make it safe. Join your teachers in calling on county government to take more decisive action in the form of mask mandates and limits on large gatherings instead of cowering behind their shirked authority. Lead the community by modeling public health conscious behavior. Educate the public by dispelling myths and conspiracies rather than catering to scientifically illiterate masses. As with nurses, we're calling on underpaid, overwhelmingly females to risk their lives for the sake of the children. Pressingly, students cannot learn if they are sick. Teachers cannot teach if they're hospitalized or dead. I submit for the record my research supporting my conclusions. Thank you.
Next, we have Angela Whelan.
Yeah, it's fine. It was better when it was German.
Good evening, board, administration, staff, and patrons. Doing the right thing isn't always easy. In fact, sometimes it's really hard, but just remember that doing the right thing is always right. I love quotes. I have them around my classroom. They help me focus, and my students love them as well. I love teaching in person, and not finishing the year with my students was one of the hardest things I ever did in my teaching career. But it was the right thing to do. And starting virtually is the right thing to do at this time as well. It is not what I want, but it is the safest for all of the stakeholders involved. This will be my 27th year of teaching, and I have spent 24 of those 27 years with the Francis Howell School District. I have been here through many ups and downs. Giving parents the option of virtual or in-person was good for them. I look today at the CDC recommendations for operating schools. It states lowest risk, virtual classes only. The highest risk, full-size in-person classes, mixed classes throughout the day. I am an all in-person teacher. I have 6 classes with sizes of 21 to 24 students. They are spaced only 2 to 3 feet apart. This is normal throughout many of our buildings. How is this even following CDC guidelines? Missouri, not to mention St. Charles County, is a hotbed for COVID right now. Then we teachers are expected to make sure that we clean our classroom between periods, but who is in the hallway monitoring students, making sure that they are being socially distant and getting to their next class on time? Are parents even aware of what our classrooms or how we teach our subjects will look like will not be normal this year? We are not going to be able to do group work or collaborative work. We are not collecting papers. Students will not be allowed to share supplies. They will have to sit in an assigned seat. They will not be able to move around within the class. They will not be able to sit by their friends at lunch or hang out with them in the hall. School will just not look normal. I know some of my friends have retired, and believe me, I've tried to figure out a way to do so myself. It is just not feasible. I do not have a choice. I do not want to retire. I love my job. I just don't feel safe. My husband does not feel safe with me coming back to work either. As of today, on the St. Charles Community Health Department website, the Francis Howell School District was at a 15% positive test rate for COVID. How can school districts surrounding our county be all virtual, yet miraculously schools in St. Charles County with a positive rate of 15% be thinking of going in person? I implore you to look closely at the numbers of students that are going to be in person in class each day. The numbers are large. And make the right, yet not easy decision to go all virtual, at least for the first quarter, until we have a positive rate under 5% in COVID cases. Thank you.
Next, we have Gina Murphy.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I would like to share with you how I'm feeling. I'm afraid to go to work. This is my 14th year as a teacher, and I have been nervous and excited in previous years, but never afraid. There are many teachers who feel the same way I do, and that is why I'm speaking tonight. I have done what I can do to educate myself about COVID-19 in our community. I have attended county, board, and task force meetings, and I have kept up on social media questions and comments within many different government, parent, and educator groups. I have felt angry, disappointed, unappreciated, frustrated, sad, and other emotions I will not name. But if I had to choose one feeling that best represents my current mindset, it would be unsafe. Let me refer to our own mission and vision values. Safety is listed as one of the guiding values for our district. We practice for catastrophes with drills throughout the school year. We have been taught how to protect our kids from intruders. We even had to participate in an active shooter drill a few years ago, so we could be better prepared, just in case. This virus is an actual threat,
not a possibility. A virus that will infect some of us at school. We are less prepared for this pandemic than we are for a school shooting. This is what we were given to fight the invisible threat. A roll of paper towels, a spray bottle of disinfectant, and a small bottle of hand sanitizer. As a school librarian, I am exposed to the entire student body. Librarians were not offered the choice of virtual teaching, so I will be teaching in person. I am left to decide on my own how to limit my exposure while I've been instructed that it's perfectly fine for all of the students to come to the Learning Commons. The district has also determined we do not need to quarantine or return books as the American Library Association, Missouri Association of School Librarians, and our public libraries recommend. I do not feel confident with these decisions. Please listen to the very people who know the reality of what you are asking us to do. Social distancing will not happen. We do not have the space. Class sizes are approximately the same size or larger in some instances. Not all parents will be truthful about their child's illness and will send them to school anyway. We do not have time to clean and disinfect between classes. Our windows do not open. Students will be in hallways at the same time when changing classes. The CDC has determined the highest risk for COVID infection in a school as follows: full-size, in-person classes, activities, and events. Students are not spaced apart, share classroom materials or supplies, and mix between classes and activities. We will be doing all of these things.
Thank you, the time is up.
Can you honestly say this is the safest option? Thank you.
Next, we have David Spies. Spies, my apologies.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. Even though I've been a teacher for 27 years, minus 2 separate years for military deployments that pulled me away, this school year weighs heavily on me. Every year is totally different. Usually the beginning of the school year is full of excitement for a new beginning. I look forward to coming together as a staff and meeting a new group of students. The air is full of energy and excitement. I often have new science toys or methods to use in the classroom. This year is clouded by lots of preparation to teach students, both in person and online, along with a looming specter that this experiment will be terminated, and we will all go back to online education. I feel like a first-year teacher with so much to do to get ready, with no idea what I'm doing at times. This anxiety around me ranges like a rise and fall of a roller coaster. My own anxiety is on the level of the year I spent in Baghdad, Iraq. I have to accept that, and I can't control what happens, but still I have to do my best. Our schools will be much like my experience in Iraq, facing an enemy in an asymmetrical battlefield where the enemy was among the populace that we were attempting to protect. Each day we ran the risk of allowing the enemy to enter our fortified position, our buildings, our area of responsibility. The enemy will be in the wire and will not be able to detect it unless the infected show symptoms. Each student or staff infected in the building is much like a suicide bomber among us. In Iraq, I had body armor, I had eye protection, I had gloves, I rode in armored vehicles. I was surrounded by a unified force of warriors that had my back. All of us had intensive training on how to respond and defeat the enemy and or mitigate their effectiveness. And still, we took casualties and people died. To confront the enemy in the building, I have a face mask today. I like it. The district provided disinfectant, foam hand sanitizer, and a roll of paper towels. And the Francis House school policies and CDC suggest protocols for schools for us to follow. I do not fault my administrators. I do not fault central office for what they're trying to do, since they're trying to follow the board's guidance. I am not sure I can keep the students safe. I had 6 teachers in my room yesterday for PD. And I was challenged to keep social distance as I worked and helped all 6 of those teachers learn Canvas. I have trouble visualizing 25 plus students in the same room being actively engaged, learning without potential spread of a life-threatening disease. Our school district experiment of in-person instruction, as planned, will fail. This district risk mitigation to prevent the COVID-19 virus spread cannot be controlled. This is not a controlled experiment. Too many variables are not being maintained as constant to prevent infection. Even if the building staff and students maintain the policies and guidelines, Murphy's Law will prevail. I think your decision is guided by politics instead of science.
Next we have Susan Niederberger.
Good evening. I'm entering my 19th year of teaching science to middle school students. Normally at this time of year I've got a to-do list that's a mile long. I'm always updating lessons and trying new things. This year, we all feel like it's our first year all over again. Not only are we learning new technology, but we're also learning how to clean our classrooms, when to send a kid to the nurse and when not to, and we're problem solving like never before. How do you provide students the opportunity to have 6 feet of visible distance when your classroom is already a tight fit? Our building administrators have been outstanding. They are receiving different directives every day, multiple times a day, and yet they continue to do everything they can to support us in our new learning. Our building secretaries have also been amazing. Take one look and you can tell they are carrying the world on their shoulders. They are not alone. Anxiety levels among teachers are at record levels. Many of my colleagues are experiencing physical symptoms as a result. One colleague said his anxiety hasn't been this bad since he was stationed in Iraq. Let that sink in. Veteran teachers, people who have been in the classroom for a quarter of a century, have been in tears because they are so stressed, so frustrated, they feel disconnected from the people in control. Parents should know that the educators in their child's building will do whatever they can to ensure their child has a meaningful learning experience. However, they should also know that while the district is telling them that we can maintain safe visible distances, they're also telling elementary teachers that 18 inches will have to suffice. They should also know that teachers have resigned and retired because they don't feel safe. They should know that teachers didn't have a summer break. Instead, we spent that time on webinars, ordering our own PPE, and speaking up to the people in power about our concerns. Unfortunately, those concerns have fallen on deaf ears, with the exception of Mrs. Walker. Thank you. Parents should also know the situation regarding substitute teachers. For years now, we've struggled to fill teacher absences. I don't know how many times I've had to cover someone else's class on my plan time because there was not a sub willing to take the job for the day. And then that was before we had COVID. That was when we had retired teachers subbing all the time. Now most retired teachers won't come near a school building for fear they'll get sick. The state of Missouri has lowered the bar on requirements to become a substitute teacher to address the problem. A person who graduated high school this summer can be a substitute on the first day of school, as long as they've completed 20 hours of online training. Parents, we ask for your grace, your understanding, and your compassion as we enter the unknown this year. Thank you.
Next we have Tracy Martinez.
Like many who've spoken before me tonight, I'm also entering my 27th year of teaching. For most of my career, SMART goals have been a staple in our instructional practices. The purpose of a SMART goal is to help the teacher set goals, and data is the key. You track your progress toward meeting your SMART goal by collecting and analyzing data. The S is for strategic. What goal are you trying to accomplish and why? Let's say our goal is to safely reopen schools amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. The M is for measurable. How do you know you've achieved your goal? What is your intended outcome? Research-based science tells us that in order to have a traditional face-to-face instruction, the community spread should be minimal to none. This is determined by less than 10 cases per population of 100,000 positivity rate, less than 5%, and a certain hospitalization rate. Unfortunately, the hospital data is not available to the general public. The Francis Howell region has a prevalence of 208 cases per 100,000 and a positivity rate of 14.77%. Both of these figures are for the last 14 days. The A is for attainable. What actions will you put in place to ensure you achieve the goal? Our goal is to safely reopen schools, and current data does not support that decision for the moment. Our actions should be go 100% virtual until the data supports the decision to reopen school buildings. The R is for relevant. How does the school align with your role as an educator? The Francis Howell mission statement is to prepare students today for success tomorrow. If we're at school for one day and then close for 3 weeks and then repeat, that is not going to help us prepare our students for success tomorrow. The T is for timely. What is the timeline for achieving this goal? Many districts who choose to start the year virtually are giving themselves the entire quarter. This provides consistency for families and also allows time for COVID cases to decline to a point where it's safe to reopen the school buildings. The fact that we haven't achieved our own SMART goal means we have more work to do before we can start in person safely. Thank you.
And our last comment of the evening will be from Harry Harris.
Okay, I'm a parent in the district. I really didn't prepare anything for tonight. I didn't think I'd really have to be here to discuss these things. 2 things. First of all, 2 months ago, the board sat here and read an incredible statement about racism and wanting to take a stance against it. I didn't come to that meeting because I didn't want to take away from some of the other things that you guys were having to talk about. But I let you know I was very proud because we did a lot of work to get to that point. I sit here 2 months later and I haven't seen anything else about it. It's not been on social media. It's not on posters. I don't see any signs in the front of this room. I don't see anything out of the buildings. Maybe you guys have something planned. I will give you that. But I'm truly hoping that before these kids step into the classroom virtually, that you're going to present this. Because I'm seeing things on my social media feed about basketball accomplishments, ordering t-shirts. I would think that having an anti-racism statement from our district could go a long ways and really should supersede those sorts of announcements. And not just once. This is not a one and done. It wasn't a one and done at the meeting. So we're going to keep coming back and talking about this until we see a really hard, firm commitment to that. I got 1:30 left. Second topic. I'm going to wrap up what we've seen here tonight. First of all, to the teachers in the audience, as a parent, I respect you. I appreciate you. I love the job that you guys are doing. I'm very happy to be in this district. I am sorry that you are in this position now. I'm sorry you've even had to come out here tonight. I'm sorry that we've had to think about this. We're almost there. We got a week. Some of these kids, some of these adults are going to be put in situations that will threaten their lives. I know you don't want to go to somebody's funeral because they caught COVID in one of these buildings. That's what it's going to come down to. Let's just face it. Major institutions of higher education have shut down after less than 8 days. And they have more money than we do. So we really need to start taking a look at that. I watched virtually last week. I saw somebody screaming at a teacher out in the parking lot and telling them that they were scared to go into their classroom. They're not scared, and we don't need that kind of behavior in this district. We need to support our teachers. We need to listen to them, everything people have said here tonight, and we need to make a strong decision to not force it in before this is safe. Thank you.
And we have reached our allotted time for Patron Comments. Moving on to FHEA comments.
I didn't think for you. She's the first one. I lost focus. Sorry.
Oh, no. It's clean. No, I know that it's clean, but you cleaned it. I cleaned it. Now it's not because I touched it. That's right. I cleaned it. Okay. Sorry. Good evening, Board of Education, Dr. Hogan, Executive Cabinet. This is really weird, though. I always, for years and years, have seen that line there, and so I can't quite get used to it. But we want you to know that a majority of our teachers are frustrated and disappointed with the decision to continue with 5-day-a-week in-person school. We returned to school this week, many of us nervous about the school year. We all want things to be normal. This is usually the most exciting time of the year for educators. This year is different. Are we excited to meet our students? Absolutely. However, as we put our desks in our rooms, we realize students will not be distanced, and no matter how the desks are arranged, it doesn't work. Not only do we need to have desks separated, we also need a chill zone for those students that need a break. We see plexiglass barriers in the office and other places that people are not likely to spend 10 to 15 minutes with another person. I want to be clear that I do believe they need to be there. I'm not indicating that they don't. However, we are not allowing, or we have not let people know what we are allowing them, that if we are allowing them in the classrooms. Some teachers are expected to have small group instruction with 3 or 4 students at a kidney-shaped table. Keep in mind that preschool through 2nd grade students are not required to wear a mask. This is not social distancing. It's risky. We want to protect our students, their families, our family, and ourselves. This is not a good plan. It's just a plan. Why did the training led by our nurses include that the CDC does not allow gaiters to be worn as face masks? But our district is allowing them. The CDC website defines social distancing or physical distancing as keeping a safe space between yourself and other people who are not from your household. Safe space is 6 feet apart. Yet somewhere along the line, we are willing to do 3 feet or less if we need to. If we are a data-driven district, we should look at the data. Francis Health School District boundary COVID data, according to the St. Charles County website, indicates that the latest 7-day average positivity rate is 14.7%. The reproduction rate is 1.13. These numbers are concerning. When we are about to put 19,000-ish people back into our school buildings, we really need to go online for the first quarter and see what happens. Thank you.
Msba? Board, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented for August 20th, 2020. Any discussion, board? Nope, sorry, no discussion on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Board, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the June 2020 and July 2020 financial statements as presented.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Silva, do you have anything? Nope. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Board, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 as presented.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
I do have one question. I noticed somewhere on for the 7,500 that there's some hotspots that we were going to be purchasing. Is that in the event that we do end up going virtual? Is that why you did it, so we could make sure that all of our kids get reliable internet service?
I'm going to say yes and no. Part of it was to still take care of the families who chose virtual fully to start the year. So we had enough hotspots to get the bulk of them ready, and we needed a few more to take care of the rest of them. In addition, we are preparing if there were to be a closure later and we needed more hotspots. So both of those things would be true.
Thank you.
Also, for discussion, I just want to point out to board, this month we started giving longer narratives on the memos for you. So hopefully that, for both you and for the community reading these memos, hopefully preemptively answered potential questions you might have and just offered more explanation in general. So we'll continue to push forward like that. If there's any feedback later on, let us know and we'll continue to refine that.
Thank you for doing that. Okay, any more discussion, board? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I would like to entertain a motion to approve the 2019-2020 Annual Secretary of the Board Report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I would like to entertain a motion to approve the bond resolution authorizing the district's $100 million general obligation bonds, Series 2020, for the purpose of acquiring land and buildings in construction, renovating, repairing, expanding, improving, furnishing, and equipping school sites, buildings, and related facilities for school purposes in the district, including but not limited to safety improvements at district facilities.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mrs. Lang, a couple things I would like to share with the board and the community tonight. And this information is posted to board docs because I think it's really good news. So on Wednesday of this week, we did the pricing for the $100 million Series 2020 bond issue. We were oversubscribed substantially. We had $286 million worth of orders for the $100 million of bonds available. In consultation with our underwriter, Stiefel, we made the decision to do our pricing on Wednesday instead of Thursday of this week. And that turned out to be a very fortuitous decision because the rates went up a little bit on Thursday, so we actually got better pricing by being in the market. Stiefel was very proactive on our part. They knew that there were some very large deals coming to market on Thursday and wanted to get us into the market before there was other demand out there. A lot of the banks and so forth are names that we would recognize, like UMB Bank and Commerce Bank, but there are a number of other large organizations that were interested in our bonds, which I think is a testament to the credit worthiness of the district. We have, over the past several years, continued to work with Standard & Poor's, and this year they did reaffirm our rating of AA. It places our district in the top 10% of all the 180 school districts that they rate, and only 7 of the districts are rated higher than Francis Howell. We were able to take advantage of a very low interest rate environment, which is great for selling our bonds. we ended up with an average coupon rate of about 2%, which is really remarkable, understanding that some of these bonds have a 20-year maturity date on them. We did, as I said, go to market on Wednesday, which helped us save quite a bit. And so I'm very happy to share the news with the board and with the community tonight. Our design team has already been meeting. We've completed some projects already, and others are getting ready to go. So we are moving forward with this work. I'm sure the board will see more purchase recommendations and recommendations for contractors come forward in the coming months. But I'm very appreciative of the citizens for Francis Howell and glad that we were able to recognize them tonight. I told them before the meeting it was fortuitous to do it tonight on the night that we're approving the sale of the first series of bonds related to Proposition S.
Okay, any questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I would like to entertain a motion to approve the resolution authorizing PMA Financial Network LLC and PMA Securities LLC to provide investment services for the Francis Howell R3 School District as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Board, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the board resolution in response to racism and discrimination as presented.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? I'm going to read the statement as part of the discussion. The Francis Howell School District Board of Education pledges to our learning community that we will speak firmly against any racism, discrimination, and senseless violence against people regardless of race, ethnicity, nationality, immigration status, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or ability. We will promote racial healing, especially for our Black and brown students and families. We will no longer be silent. We are committed to creating an equitable and anti-racist system that honors and elevates all, but one that also specifically acknowledges the challenges faced by our Black and brown students and families. In order to accomplish these ideals, the Francis Howell Board of Education commits to the following. The Francis Howell Board of Education stands firmly against all acts of individual and systematic racism. We commit to becoming allies in the struggle to foster better understanding in a socially just community. We will openly talk, challenge, and confront racism. As a school board and district, we value each and every student, family, and staff member. We embrace our organizational responsibility to ensure that the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion are integrated into the culture, curriculum, policies, programs, operations, and practices of the Francis Howell School District. The Francis Howell School District Board of Education hereby declares that racism is a crisis that negatively impacts our students, our families, our community, and our staff. The board hereby declares its commitment to establishing, supporting, and sustaining a culture of anti-racism district-wide. We see you, we hear you, we are listening, and we are learning. And we will sign this after the meeting, as long as it passes. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Would like to entertain a motion to approve the agreement with Facilitron for its facility rental reservations program, option 1 as presented.
So.
And we will turn this over to Facilities Director John Klein.
Good evening. I'm here this evening to talk to you a little bit about our facility rental program, give you a little bit of history, talk about some of the challenges that we faced and where we're going forward with the program. As you are aware, the Board of Education approved the program to start, and in January 2018 we hired our first manager and then program launched in the fall of 2018. At the same time, we also launched our School Dude online reservation system, where both internal and external facility users could sign up to reserve a space on one of the facilities in Francis Howell School District. The School Dude system, some of the challenges that we faced, the School Dude system that we implemented turned out to be very tedious, challenging to both internal and external users. Internal users quit using the program, and external users struggled to connect with the program in order to reserve their spaces. There was also a lot of confusion on the rental tiers. The rental tiers are groups 1, 2, and 3. Group 1 is all internal events. Group 2 is not-for-profit, and Group 3 is for-profit entities. There was some crossing of the lines between groups 2 and 3 that caused a lot of confusion as to where people fell on the rental scale. We also had problems with invoicing. Sometimes invoices were sent, sometimes invoices weren't sent. If they were sent, they didn't accompany the full charges for the services that were rendered, such as overtime, chalking of fields, event managers, and things like that. They were just basically for the flat space rental. Because we had problems with the School Dude program working for internal users, and internal users dropped off using the program, a space may have looked open, and so we booked an external event into a space, only to find out that it was in use by the school, and then sometimes, if it wasn't even put in by the facility rental department, we had spaces that were double and triple booked. So on a night that we thought that we were going to receive at least 2 to 3 different rental revenues, we only received 1 because of the overbooking of the space. We had a lot of disorganization within the department. Phone calls weren't returned, emails weren't returned. We also did a market study and found out that our rental rates were below the market. Also, COVID-19 hit this past year. We have not had any facility rentals because we have closed that down from March all the way into the present day. So some of the changes that we've implemented. So when I first started in December, Dr. Hendricks-Harris, her first task to me was to get my hands around the facility rental program and find out if we could put it on a trajectory for success. We also had a leadership change in the facility rental program. The manager had resigned. We have taken the oversight of those duties and assigned it to an existing manager who had the bandwidth and the talents to be able to help to continue the program towards success. We also added an administrative assistant in March of 2020. She's been a fabulous addition and has a background within customer service as well as event services. She's helped us clean up the groups so that there are clear definitions of what groups 1, 2, and 3 mean. She's helped us conduct a market study of our rental rates so that we could see where we are competitive against others like schools as well as other facilities within the community. We've also implemented a generic email address that goes to more than just one person. With our manager prior, it went to his personal work box, and if he wasn't there or wasn't checking his email, no one saw the contact from the community. With the generic email address, several people can look at it, myself included, and we can respond to clients, both internal and external concerns and questions that they might have about the facility rental program so that we can improve our customer service experience. Let's take a little bit of a look about the revenue that's been collected. In the first year, we brought in about $84,000, and then in year 2, we brought in about $45,000. There was another $23,000, almost $24,000 that was not billed, which was overtime services just from custodial alone. As I mentioned before, we did have some issues where we were not billing for the full services of the program. In year 3, we are predicting about a $60,000 revenue, and that is kind of a conservative estimate because obviously being closed because of COVID, and in year 2 we also lost out a portion of our potential for revenue because we didn't have the summer camps that we normally would have had, the sports camps that we normally would have had because of the COVID closure. So when you put that together with our revenue and our expenses, you'll see that we ran deficit for the first 2 years, and we are projecting that we will run in the positive for the 3rd year. The reason for the deficits in the prior 2 years is because the program was mismanaged. We were below market rates, and we weren't focused on customer service, and we weren't charging for the full amount of the services that we should have, that would have offset the expenses that incurred to the program. Going forward, how we're going to improve and things that we'd like to do is that we're going to implement a new facility rental software program called Facilitron. It's very user-friendly. It comes with back-end support and a lot of features and reporting that will help us guide and make decisions going forward with the facility rental program that were not available to us in the previous program. We're very confident that we will have buy-in from the internal users as well as external users, and the company provides support to both internal and external users to the fullest amount, helping them achieve their goal of reserving the space that they need. We will be resuming in October our outside rentals. We've held off until October because of the COVID closure and then restarting schools. That's going to be chaotic enough as it is, and we want our schools to be focused on our students and our teachers and helping get the schools back into some sense of normality before adding extra into the school. We'll continue to rebuild and nurture the community relationships, both internal and external. That's very important to the success of this program. And we're going to be committed to continuing with improved changes for the next 2 years on the program. We'll be monitoring what happens in the current year and looking forward to hopefully having a regular year in FY22 where we can really see what the program can do. Our commitment will be to provide updates to the Board of Education on a semesterly basis so that you are aware of what's happening with the program, the challenges that we're seeing, and the changes that we're implementing in order to keep the program on a trajectory for success. There are benefits to the program. It standardizes the rental rates across all of our facilities, where prior to having this program, some schools may charge for a space, others may not. Others may charge a higher rate for a like space, and others might charge less. This standardizes it across all like facilities within the district. It builds and strengthens our community relations, and it helps keep those community dollars here within the district, instead of them going away from the district and using other spaces within the county or outside of the county. It also helps keep us consistent with other schools that we benchmark. All the schools that we do benchmark against do have a facility rental program that manages the usage of their facilities. And that's where we are at this time, and I will open it for any questions the board may have.
So I have a question. When we open this program back up in October, are we going to somehow require masks for everybody that's entering our facilities? Or if not, I don't know that I'm comfortable opening that program.
Yes, ma'am, we will. It's part of the new policies that we've implemented on the campuses as it is, that everyone must wear their mask. So even outsiders coming into the building will be required to wear a mask.
And I would also add that just like most things we're doing, that's a targeted start date right now. But with everything, if things change, it could not end up being our starting date depending on situation.
And I guess my follow-up question is, when we first started talking about this program and charging our community to use the facilities, because previously we didn't charge at all. We were looking at about $1 million a year in projected revenue. And so I'm just concerned we're down to $13,000 for the third year of it. So I'm just curious, where do you guys see this going? Do we see it continuing that we're going to charge the community, or?
For now, the program is to charge for the usage of the facilities. It keeps us consistent with other like schools. There are challenges, obviously, navigating this COVID world, so it is really hard to predict, what our revenues will be, and so that's why we're kind of hoping in the second year we'll have a normal year, but we'll have our regular camps we'll have access to, and then we'll be able to really see in year 2 what the potential of the program is and decide what we need to do from there.
And one of the things too, just to clarify, that I asked John to address in his presentation was what is our actual reality? What initial projections before this ever started as a program had to predict how much spaces would be used, how frequently, any given space would be rented and all of that. And so what I've asked John to do is get a better hold on what does reality say, how often do our spaces actually get used. And so any projections that happened ahead of time, we're now getting a new baseline of what is real and what is expected. And my goal, and what I've asked Kevin and John to share in with me, is to get a sense of where this will go, keep an eye on it, and when we make future decisions about how this looks going forward, they'll be based in exactly what we're seeing as opposed to faulty projections or things not working like they're supposed to and all of that. We'll be able to really make realistic decisions on what's in front of us.
One last question. So is it the other school districts in St. Charles County that are running very similar programs to this?
There are.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
And
you.
that's who we benchmarked against when we were doing our market study. We started first within the county and then expanded out to St. Louis County. And then we expanded it out into community resources that are available, just so we can kind of see how we were in comparison.
Wonderful, I appreciate that, thank you.
I just had a couple questions, and there was a couple that I submitted prior to, so I thank you guys for answering those. Is there any way to delineate between who was a category 2 and they were within the district, so a taxpayer for the district, and someone outside of the district? Because I know that there were different, for example, football organizations that were outside of the district that came and used our facilities, and we charged them a rental rate.
We can try and look into it. It'll be hard because we don't have access to the program that we were using before, because that was a huge expense to the program and it wasn't working for us, and so we tried to get that relationship. But we will try and see when we come back and I can provide that to you.
Okay, and I appreciate that. The other, I guess, follow-up to that would be, since we are asking people that have already contributed the tax dollars that built these facilities and whatnot, if they're not for profit, is there, and maybe this is a discussion for a different day that we can put onto agenda, of maybe reclassifying some of these. I just have some deep concerns that we're asking not-for-profit organizations that are in our tax base to actually pay to use the facilities they've already paid for. So.
Understood. There are several, well, actually all of the facilities that we looked at have a rate for nonprofit and have a rate for profit. It is something that we can continue to look at. That's one of our commitments, is to always look to see what others are doing. We've made some exemptions for booster clubs and things that support the school district to move them into group 1.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that we've done just to clarify the differences between the different groups. And kind of clean that up a little bit, because organizations that are truly supporting the organization, the school district itself, should fall into that category 1. And so we've done some of that accommodating, and we will continue to look at that and see what our peers are doing as well.
Gotcha, and I agree that I think it's a good community outreach and relation tool that we can use, and maybe even it might be a little bit more beneficial if we cut them some breaks on the space, maybe not necessarily the services.
Absolutely.
I guess a couple points that I want to elaborate on are the fact that this is an ongoing process and that we are going to be providing information and transparency to the board and the public as a whole on a semester by semester basis. So we'll be able to see if this is working, be more responsive to the, the actual program itself instead of waiting several years. And, it won't get out of control like it did previously. And then to reiterate on something that Doug had said, I'm glad to see that we're looking at the potential for maybe reclassifying some of these groups and moving some of these groups. And I guess there's a procedure that if there's a community organization that feels they need to be one or the other, that they could contact, or some type of process that they could appeal or see what classification it would be in. I didn't know how that would work.
It's still a work in progress. They can appeal to us, and we can look at what we can do and have discussions internally. The purpose of setting those guidelines is basically, it's just that. It's a guideline that helps us to establish where things should stand. Nothing is 100% set in stone, but we have to have something in order to guide us and to operate with. And so that's what that is. So that's one of the things that we'll continue to look at and work at and try and improve and make it so that we stand in the top tier of that realm of facility rental.
Just one other question. This new program that we're going to is different from the other one, to where it's more on the back end. It's a percentage of the fees that we take in rather than an upfront fee. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And with that, the difference between the two programs is that it comes with back-end support that will also augment us, helping us with outside folks in the community who are struggling to do something online. They can call in 24 hours a day and reach somebody who can help them book their space. And then when we have to cancel the space, it's not just myself, a manager, and an AA trying to call 30 or 40 different people, they will help us as well. It's in their interest to try and help us continue to book our spaces as much as possible.
And if we decide down the line to change some classification, we're not out any upfront money?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say I appreciate the honesty, and I'm looking forward to full transparency moving forward.
You'll have that.
Thank you. Anything else, board? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have the MSBA August board report.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's board report for the month of August. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at how Missouri's public schools are meeting the challenge of continuing to educate our students during the coronavirus pandemic. School boards and administrators throughout Missouri have spent the spring and summer developing plans and now are implementing those plans to start the new school year, which begins this month for most school districts. The decision to open school buildings and how to open school buildings is best made at the local level, so those plans vary significantly depending on location and local circumstances. Some districts are offering full-time in-person instruction, some a combination of in-person and virtual learning, and some are going completely virtual. Keeping students, teachers, and staff safe and healthy remains a priority for school boards and administrators while still providing students with a quality education. There are a couple of new federal laws on emergency leaves that apply to school district employees during this pandemic. One is the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. MSBA Associate Executive Director Kelly Hopkins says that law provides for 2 weeks of leave at full pay under certain circumstances.
It can be taken for 6 different reasons, all related to COVID, such as isolation requirements, quarantine, illness, caring for someone who's ill, those sorts of things. There's 6 different reasons why you can take that leave, and it is at full pay.
The other new federal law is the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act. It allows eligible employees to have up to 12 weeks of leave to care for a child because a school or daycare facility has been closed, or if the care provider is unavailable due to a public health emergency. Contact the MSBA Legal Department for more details on those 2 new federal laws. While many Missouri students will be returning to classrooms this month, others will be learning virtually, either part-time or full-time. Hopkins says there's likely to be a difference between the virtual learning that took place last spring and the virtual learning taking place during the new school year.
The biggest difference between virtual education in March and April and virtual education this coming school year is that March and April were a little loosey. We just wanted to keep students engaged. Virtual education beginning this year is going to be real education, 4 to 6 hours a day with students in classes and doing work and meeting the requirements of the district in terms of how they perform.
MSBA continues to update our Pandemic Recovery Considerations document. The latest update features recommendations for teachers developed by Missouri Teachers of the Year. Topics include the cycle of assessment and instruction during school reopening, classroom design during the pandemic, and COVID considerations regarding substitute teacher plans and preparations. The Pandemic Recovery Considerations document is posted on the MSBA website along with numerous other resources related to the reopening of schools. In response to the ever-changing environment and the challenges you are facing as Missouri school leaders, the MSBA Board of Directors has voted unanimously to take the 2020 MSBA Annual Conference in cooperation with the Missouri Association of School Administrators and Missouri PTA completely virtual. The virtual conference will include traditional pre-conference sessions, general sessions, and other conference events, as well as several sessions related to issues surrounding the coronavirus pandemic. Approximately 30 sessions will be presented during the virtual annual conference on September 25th through 26th. Additionally, a series of online sessions will be offered weekly to registered conference participants beginning October 6th. Registration will remain the same, and members will have access to all content until June 30th of 2021. Check the MSBA website for registration information and a schedule of conference sessions. Also, be sure your school board is represented at the MSBA Fall Delegate Assembly to be held virtually on Friday, September 25th during the annual conference. This delegate assembly will be considering approval of MSBA's advocacy positions document that will form the basis of MSBA's lobbying efforts during the 2021 session of the Missouri General Assembly. Delegates do not have to be registered for the annual conference in order to participate in the delegate assembly, and if your board's designated delegate cannot participate, you can designate another board member to represent your board at this important meeting. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
Next, we'll move on to Superintendent Comments. Dr. Wilkin.
Thank you. A few things I want to talk about in terms of data metrics out in the community, because I know we've heard a lot of comments from different people about that. So I want to speak a little bit to that while I have a minute. But before I get into that, one of the things we've said all along is that we would keep an eye on changing guidance from health officials. And one of those changing pieces of guidance that's come across recently from the American Academy of Pediatrics is around mask wearing. And the newest guidance is now suggesting mask wearing is safe and appropriate for all children 2 years old and up. So we will be pushing out new information to our families and to our staff that we're going to be requiring masks for all children 2 years and up. So really for all of our children, even at the early childhood level. We do recognize that for the youngest learners we have, that they'll need some grace and some flexibility in helping them to do that properly and get used to that. But that is going to be guidance that we are changing, and that's a commitment we've had all along, is we make decisions with the best information at the time, and as new things emerge, we will adjust. So that is something new that's going to get pushed out. Overall, when we talk about data metrics, some of the speakers you heard tonight and much of the feedback I get asks me to highlight specifically which data metrics will drive our decisions. Often asking me to point out one single metric or one single threshold that's going to drive our decisions. In conversations both with our health department and with superintendents from all around the region, I've not found anyone that suggests we ought to look at one data metric, nor have I found anyone that has suggested a single threshold that will drive our decisions. Because there's an interplay of many different data points, some of which will tell you positive things at one point and others that will tell you something more negative, but the interplay of all of those is what we should be looking at. So just to talk a little bit about the thought process that I've been following and what we've been seeing. So our health department would suggest somewhere around 8 or 9 different metrics we ought to look at, and as many of you have seen, literally just this afternoon they made available a public dashboard alongside their typical Fha County dashboard. This new one gives the ability to break it down by school district. My understanding is they've actually built that around zip codes, and since some of our zip codes are shared with other districts, it's not perfect, but it is a much more specific look than just looking at the whole county. So I know a lot of people started to see that today. Just to highlight some of the data points that we have been keeping an eye on. One of those is a 14-day moving average. So this would be a measurement of how many new cases occur in a 14-day span and keeping track of that on a rolling average of 14 days. The important thing that we've seen in this, we also look at trends rather than just always saying is there one specific number that is a magic number that equals now we're in great shape versus if we're on the wrong side we're in bad shape. We also look at those trends, and that 14-day moving average actually hit a peak around July 27th, and for the past 3 weeks has actually been improving. With the exception of the last couple of days, we've seen it uptick a little bit just in the last couple of days, but it was on a nice 3-week trend that we were watching there. Another one is that positive test rate. You heard multiple speakers today refer to a positive test rate up over 14%. When I checked the health department site yesterday, those same dates were showing a positivity rate of just under 7%. So something within the data, whether the 14% is correct or the 6.98% I think I saw yesterday was correct, those numbers are reflecting differently today than they did yesterday. And I don't mean one day later it's that much higher. I mean literally the same days are showing, rather than in the range of about 7%, they're showing much higher. So we'll be doing some checking to see what that positivity rate truly is, because we did see that change in the data as of today. The other one that you hear a lot about is the reproductive number, and that is a value you'll see it's all around 1.0. If it's above 1.0, that would indicate that every time you have a positive case, it's spreading to others on a little bit greater rate, and therefore the virus is spreading. Right at 1.0 would indicate the spread is flat, and under 1.0 would indicate that it's decreasing in terms of spread. That number actually hit a high point on July 2nd, and we had about a 6-week trend of nice steady decrease in that number. And from July 24th up until the last couple of days, that number was actually under 1 for our county. And so that would have been a case of a number that actually was telling us what we wanted to see, which was under 1. Again, much like that rolling 14-day average, in the last couple of days, it has had a little bit of an uptick as well. So those are all things we'll keep an eye on. But in terms of making firm decisions just off of one of those numbers or a snapshot of one single day, doesn't work very well for us, because a decision that might have been made in mid-July looks different today, and a decision based on a high number today, the overall trend has been a good one. If you have a day or two that peaks and then it continues on the trend it was on, that's still a positive piece of information for us. So we will continue to watch those. Other things the health department talks about, and you can see it on their website now, is a breakdown of how the cases spread out among age groups. So for a little while now, really since the July peak, the highest age group of cases has been people in their 20s. So we can see that school-age children are not as high as residents in their 20s, but we do keep an eye on that as well, and they're able to break that down for us, even to look at the younger children versus the teenagers and so on. Hospital capacity is another data point they talk about, and that is really just our healthcare system's ability to keep up with cases, and that has been a relatively comfortable situation for a while in terms of capacity and the ability to keep up. Current total positive, so not just the rolling average of new cases, but just how many are active cases in our community is something else that they share. And then, as I mentioned now, being able to break some of this data down by zip code or school districts. So that's those are all different data points that we try to keep a kind of a global view on all of those. And on any given day, some of them tell a good story, some tell a negative story. And keeping an eye on the trends of those over time has been important for us. And it has been promising to see about a 3-week trend in most of those data points that has been good to see. These last couple of days of uptick, we'll continue to watch and see what happens. The other piece of things that becomes important is what is our reality within our facilities, within our buildings. And so community data points is one thing, but reality of how we're seeing it in our buildings. So for example, since sports camps reopened in early July, we've had hundreds of kids on our campuses every single day. And in that entire span of time, we've had, I believe it's two of our students have tested positive, which have led to 0 other quarantines. And separately, 2 of our coaches have tested positive, which have also led to 0 other quarantines. So we have seen within our facilities the ability to bring hundreds of kids onto our campus and see how our protocols are working. So those are things we'll also watch, and they're things that we're going to be very realistic about. As I've said in previous conversations, we're not naive to think that COVID won't find its way into our buildings. However, if our strategies are working well, we will see that we will be able to keep that from becoming outbreaks, keep that from becoming spread. To date, all of the positive cases we have seen have not been contracted at school. These are people who have become positive due to interactions outside of school or outside of work. So those are also going to be important data points for us to keep an eye on. we will be monitoring on a daily basis how many people are out both because they're positive with COVID and because they're being quarantined. And those numbers, even if the community numbers are in a fantastic place, our own numbers internally could cause us to make some different decisions. So we'll be keeping an eye on those as well. So my point from all of this is as much as I get asked to declare some very specific numbers and very specific data points, it's not something we're going to be able to just offer because there's so much here that interplays with each other. That's why we continue to talk with our health department as we talk about our strategies and our plans on reopening. We run those by our health department. We check it against updated recommendations and guidance from many different angles, and we've mentioned those before: CDC, our health department, American Academy of Pediatrics, and so on. So we will continue to keep an eye on all of these things. We fully recognize that even an in-person start brings a possibility that there could be closures in the future. Ideally, if you are impacted with closures, it's a single building rather than a whole district and things like that. So we'll keep an eye on how all of that works. Not trying to keep it secret, but at the same time, not going to be able to say, here is a very specific line that we're going to draw in the sand, and if we fall on one side of the line or the other, it's going to trigger an automatic decision. We're not going to be able to do that either. And I guess I would close by saying, we are going to need everyone's help to make this work. We need our community's help. We need our community to work with their students on following the guidelines in place. That's wearing masks for everyone. That's following good hygiene practices. That's staying home if you have any symptoms at all. And it's a new world for all of us regarding that. We have many employees who are used to saying, I'm going to come to work, I'm going to push through, I'm going to be at work. And now we're going to be saying, please don't. We need you to stay home if you have any symptoms at all. And so just a plea to our community, to our students, to our staff, to our families, to take all of this seriously. This simply will not work unless everyone cooperates to do their part. You've heard some comments tonight as well about pleas to our community officials to put different guidelines in place. So far we've seen that when we have positive cases, they have not come from in our buildings, they've come from elsewhere. So just pleading to everybody to when you are not at school, not at work, that you're following all these same guidelines and these same healthy practices so that wherever you go and whatever actions you engage in, you're not putting yourself at risk of getting COVID or putting yourself in a quarantine situation. So lots to be thinking about, lots that we're watching, and we will continue to keep an eye on this on a daily basis and keep you as the board informed. And as potential decisions need to be changed, we will be open about that.
All right, thank you. Board of Education comments and requests. Anybody?
I just want to, I'll say
Mr. Ziegemeier.
Yes. Sorry, just trying to hit the button. No, I just want to commend everybody in this room, administrative people and teachers, for the work that they're doing. Obviously, we are in a pandemic and we're working through it the best ways that we possibly can. So whatever line you fall on, thank you for what you do and moving forward together.
I think we all echo that statement. Anything else? Okay. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
That's just information.
Still entertaining the motion?
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then if we can sign.
Yes.